Hey, welcome to South Texas Youth Soccer's webinar series. Today we're joined by Paul Leese for a conversation on recruiting advice for men's college soccer. Paul is currently the head men's soccer coach at UT Rio Grande Valley in Edinburgh, one of only 4 Division I men's programs in Texas. A native of Liverpool, England, Paul played college soccer at Charleston Southern University and also at Furman University. Paul's been coaching at the college level since 2001 with roles as an assistant at Elon University, Furman University, and Coastal Carolina, before taking the head job at Coker College in 2010. Paul became the head coach at UTRGV in 2015, where he's guided the program to back-to-back winning seasons in 2018 and 2019, and has elevated the team to a top 20 national ranking. Paul holds the NSCAA Premier Diploma, as well as licenses from USSF and the English FA. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you on today. I look forward to hearing your presentation and giving advice to these young men about college recruiting.
Good morning, Gareth. Thank you very much for the invitation, and hello to everyone who's joining us. I certainly look forward to sharing as much information as I can with you guys this morning. What I'd like to do is certainly, I know we're all kind of going through a challenging time right now. We're deprived of playing the sport that we love. We're stuck indoors. But one of the things that certainly this webinar is showing us the opportunity is to go ahead and share information, possibly in a manner that we weren't doing before. So obviously, I hope everyone's doing a great job in staying safe, staying healthy, and also trying to stay as connected to the game that we love and as fit as we can. Certainly, expect us to be back out on the soccer field very soon. And hopefully all enjoying this, wonderful sport that we love. So with that, we'll spend this morning talking about the college recruiting process. And what I'd like to do is touch upon a few things. From my experience as a college coach, typically the recruiting process can be a one-way street sometimes. As a coach, I'll go out and watch players, I'll recruit on the road, I'll watch games, I'll then call a player up, we'll have a conversation. Hopefully we'll also have the player come and visit the program, and I'll spend a lot of time sharing everything that we do, here within the university and my soccer program. And it's very one-directional from the coach to the player. I don't think often enough that players actively participate in that process. And one of the things that we need to do from both sides, we need to make sure that we find this best fit. As a coach, I'm looking for the best player who can elevate my program, who can represent the university, who can be successful in the classroom and on the soccer field, and who'll fit within my team dynamic. But equally, as a young player, you need to make sure that you find the best fit within the university, with that coach, with your future teammates, with the style of play. And as such, you need to be active in this process and try and make sure you find as many answers to the questions that you have. So what we'll do this morning is, through the presentation, you can see there we have a number of topics I'd like to touch upon. We'll talk a little bit about choosing the college, how you go through that process. We'll discuss the role of the NCAA. We'll also chat a little bit about becoming a professional and the aspect of that now in the game here in the US. We'll certainly talk about academic and athletic eligibility. I think it will be very good to talk about timelines from the coach's side, as well as the youth player side. And then we'll end with a good discussion on how to recruit yourself, and hopefully some good questions that this presentation will bring forward. So looking at how you guys will choose your college, I do believe now I've been coaching at the college level for almost 20 years now, and I've coached at the Division I level and the Division II level. And I do believe there is a good fit for every youth player out there. There are many colleges, many programs, and it doesn't matter what level of play you're at right now. I really think you can find a great environment where you can enjoy your soccer, earn your college degree, and have a wonderful 4-year experience. So during this initial process, these are fairly straightforward, thoughts to go through, but I think sometimes you may not spend as much time on them. So for example, where do you want to go to school? Do you want to go to a university that's close to home? Do you want to go to a university that is in an urban setting, has a downtown campus to it? Or would you like to be in a campus that is more enclosed? Do you want to be at a university that has thousands of students and you won't see the same face on any given day during the course of the year? Do you want to be in classes that have hundreds of people in them, or do you want to have a small class size where you can speak 1v1 with the professor? So all these things are very personal to you, and you need to spend time thinking about them. As a college coach, we often say when we speak to a recruit, we try and put a question to them. Imagine, the worst case scenario. We all hope this never happens, touch wood that no one suffers any kind of injuries during their college career. But if you were to have an injury that would mean you couldn't play the sport that you love, would you still choose to go to that university? So location is important, the size is important. Do they have the academic major that you wish to study? These are questions that you do need to spend a lot of time on and try and compare and contrast with universities that you're considering. Equally, your parents will be very involved in this decision, since for the most part, parents will be helping on the financial side, I'm sure, and that's a massive decision in this process also. You may want to go to a school, you may want to play for a soccer team, but if it's not affordable, that might rule it out of your choice. So financial cost is a big piece. And then obviously the soccer, which is driving most people, particularly if you're speaking to me this morning, you're actively interested in playing at the college level, then you need to consider, and this is sometimes the difficult thing, because you're not fully experienced, you haven't been in the college game yet, so it's hard to make a decision based on things that you don't know. So how important is it to you that you play at the highest level within the team that you can find at college? How important is it to you that you receive significant playing time? How important is it to you that you play with teammates that fit your own mentality and have the same ambitions of you? You should obviously be speaking with your future coach and make sure that you fit in with his plans. The style of play of the college team reflects the strengths that you have as a player. So these things are very important, and as you can probably imagine, there will always be a trade-off within these ideas. You may not want to travel and go to school far from home, but maybe that has the best team and the best fit for you and is the most affordable. You may have a fantastic program that you'd love to play for, a coach that you love, but they don't have the academic major that you wish to study. So a lot of things will go into making this decision. You need to spend time early in the making sure you recognize what is important to you. So those are a few points on how to choose what school you attend. The role of the NCAA is vital in this college recruiting process. The NCAA oversee everything that we do within the college game. For those that aren't familiar, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, they run Division I, Division II, Division III, as well as junior college athletic programs throughout the country. There is another organization called the NAIA that is a smaller organization, which do offer some programs as well, and some universities who choose to align themselves with NAIA. There are slightly less restrictions within the NAIA, so the NCAA oversee the majority of the sports at the college level here in the US. They are the governing body. It is their job to provide all the support to all the student athletes competing at university at the college level. There are many committees in place to help provide the best experience during those 4 years. They will determine legislation that dictates how the sports operate, and they also manage all of the championships throughout the year. One of the things that is most synonymous with the NCAA for the youth player is they determine whether you're eligible or not to compete. So this is the interaction that you are most likely to have with the NCAA. They determine the eligibility standards. So for example, you must graduate from high school before you can play collegiate sports at the NCAA level. You must have a certain SAT or SAT score. We'll look at the eligibility in a little bit more detail here, but they determine those criteria. They also determine similar criteria for international students who wish to come to the US to play college athletics. So the 3 divisions, I think this is very important to touch upon. I mentioned at the beginning that I've coached at the Division II level as well as the Division I level, and relating to my statement that there is a great fit for every youth soccer player here in the country, it's important to share how the distinction between Division I, Division II, and Division III is not always simple and clear-cut. For example, the way in which universities receive Division I classification or Division II classification is not necessarily on the strength of their athletic teams. So it's not that you have the best soccer team that determines whether you play at the Division I level. Division I criteria must be met. For example, the university must offer a minimum number of sports. If the university doesn't offer 16 sports, they cannot be classified as Division I. They must offer a certain number of academic offerings. So that would be undergraduate and graduate programs. So if a university does not offer master's programs, graduate degrees, they also cannot qualify themselves or classify themselves as Division I. So that's very important. I coach at the Division II level. I've seen Division II soccer teams that can beat Division I soccer teams. The best mentality to probably have is consider the following statement. There are very good soccer programs at the Division I level. There are very good soccer programs at Division II and Division III level. There are some very average soccer teams at Division I level, Division II and Division III, and equally there are some weak programs at Division I, Division II, and Division III. So it's important for you to find the best fit based on the criteria that we mentioned on the prior slide, and not necessarily focus just on what division that program competes at. The junior college, which we'll also mention a little bit in the academic eligibility slide, junior colleges provide a really good, almost a middle gap throughout the university setting, in the sense that if you're not eligible to play at Division I or Division II or Division III level, you are able to attend a junior college, which is a 2-year program, and you can achieve a 2-year associate's degree, and that will then allow you to move into the Division I, Division II, or Division III level. So junior colleges also provide a very good opportunity for some students that may not have found a perfect fit straight out of high school. Okay. So the NCAA also provide a lot of regulations on coaches, and this is a good thing because it protects you as the soccer player, as the youth player. You don't want a college coach harassing you and camping outside your house or your home just because he wants you to play on his team. So we have limitations on how frequent we can call you, how often we can watch you play. Some of the regulations that you guys need to be aware of are, for example, it's very important to know that as a Division I head coach or as a Division I coach, I cannot contact you directly prior to June the 15th going into your junior year. So you may call me as a sophomore. You may be interested in attending UTRGV, and you may leave a message for me. I am not permitted to call you back. So in a way to protect a lot of the youth coaches, the NCAA have established a regulation that means we can only start our contact with you during the summer, that June 15th date prior to your junior year. After that, we are allowed to call you as many times as we wish. We can obviously come and watch you play. You know, we can invite you to come and visit the university campus. You may hear the phrases an official visit or an unofficial visit. The distinction between the two is that an official visit is one in which I as a coach and I as our soccer program, we can invite you and we can cover your costs. So we can pay for your travel and your transportation. We can pay for your food and your accommodation during your visit. An official visit is only permitted during your senior year in high school. However, an unofficial visit purely implies the burden of cost falls on the student. So you could come and pay a visit to UTRGV in your sophomore or junior year, as long as the university doesn't provide any costs or expenses to you, such as your transportation or any food or any accommodation. So you may hear official and unofficial visits being mentioned during the recruiting process. You should become familiar with the acronym NLI. That stands for National Letter of Intent. That is your scholarship. That is what you will sign as an agreement and a commitment to play for that university. Those national letters of intent will detail a financial scholarship award. It could be small, it could be large, however that amount may be. And that award, it lasts for a duration of 1 year, and it is renewable each year, but it was also based on certain things the student must meet. For example, you must make sure you retain your eligibility status. We'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide as well. Verbal commitments are, as they sound, you can make a verbal commitment to a coach prior to signing a national letter of intent, and that is now a commitment that both parties have entered into, especially as it relates to scholarship, because there is a signing day at which the earliest opportunity to sign a national letter of intent comes into effect. And that is the second Wednesday in November of your senior year in high school. So it is common for many students, many youth players to verbally commit prior to that November date. And then when that date arrives, they will sign their national letter of intent. Something that will be very helpful in the recruiting process discussion is discussion on scholarships. Sometimes it can be, the expectation is that there are hundreds of scholarships available and every soccer player can receive a full scholarship. But I can tell you that it is very difficult to receive a full scholarship. There is a limited amount of money that each soccer program has at their disposal. For example, the maximum permitted by the NCAA at the Division I level is an award of 9.9 equivalency, which is almost 10, but it means that if one full scholarship has the amount of $25,000, then a Division I soccer coach will have 9.9 of those, so almost 10 times that amount. So a good way to look at it is they do have close to 10 full scholarships at their disposal, but that doesn't even permit a Division I college coach to field a full starting 11 of full scholarship players. So by default, we then use those 9.9 scholarships to distribute and split up between a full roster. In many cases, roster sizes vary between 25 and 35 players at the Division I level. So you can imagine if everything was divided equally, you would possibly receive close to a third of a scholarship per player. And now it is up to the head coach to decide which players receive how much in order to try and put out the strongest team he can. So here are some perceptions and thoughts that a college coach has to go through in deciding how to award scholarship. I may have one player, let's say he's a forward, and I think he's very talented. I rate him very highly, and I could potentially award him a very large, close to a full scholarship, and have him come and play for me. He's a very good player. He's worth a big scholarship. I could choose to do that. However, that means I may not be able to get any other players because I've used my scholarship at an equally high level. So I may choose to find two forwards who may not be as strong as my first choice, but if I can split up my scholarship from one full into two half scholarships, I then have two forwards that I can use, and they may not necessarily be as talented or as strong as the first forward, but I have more depth in my team now to work through an entire season. So just making decisions based on how we try and award our scholarship allotment is very important in our process. And sometimes we'll pass up on a stronger player that we feel would be great for our team in order to get a deeper squad. So it's good to consider that in the recruiting process. It's also very important to know that there are many, many more scholarships and dollar amounts available in academic scholarships, in other awards. There are federal grants. So as you go through this process, yes, speak early with the soccer coaches. We hope you're highly recruited to the point where you can receive an athletic scholarship, a soccer scholarship, but make sure you also pursue all avenues for financial support, because that will certainly help you guys out during the process. Moving on.
Yes. If I could ask a question real quick on that one. So can you maybe clarify for the people who are listening the differences between Division 1, 2, 3, junior college, NAIA when it comes to scholarships, so they understand as they're going through the recruiting process what might be available at each of those levels?
Absolutely. And that's something to take into consideration as well. We just mentioned that at the Division 1 level, and this is important to note, 9.9 is the maximum permitted by the NCAA. That does not mean that every Division 1 program has 9.9 scholarships to award. That decision is a university decision, and they may choose to only allow 8 scholarships or 7 scholarships or even less. So Division 1 has 9.9. Division 2 has 9 men's soccer scholarships to award. So they have effectively 1 less. Division 3 does not offer any athletic scholarships in any of their sports. Division 3 offers academic scholarships instead. And in many cases, the academic awards can be as high, if not higher, than many Division 1 soccer scholarship awards. So Division 1 and Division 2 do offer scholarships, soccer scholarships. Division 3 does not. Junior college also offers athletic scholarships, and I believe I'm right in saying that at the junior college level for men's soccer, I believe they offer 18. So there are many more scholarships and there's more money available at the junior college level. So that's very important as well during this process. I know that many players, including myself, need financial support if they are to attend college and play soccer. So hopefully that helps in that conversation too. And it's worth also mentioning that, the award that you may be offered as a first-year player, it may not be as high as you could possibly earn later on during your 4-year career. I always say this to recruits. You can imagine I have a junior or a senior player returning, and he now has 2 or 3 years worth of experience at the Division 1 level. He's already played for me, so I have a relationship with him. He knows our tactical concepts. He knows the players and his teammates around him. He's very familiar with our environment and our system, and obviously is a very valuable player. He would obviously expect to receive more scholarship than a first-year player who has not been tested yet at the Division 1 level, who hasn't played within our environment, and who hasn't played with his new teammates yet. So I know that different coaches operate obviously in a different manner, you know, but for me personally, it is very typical for first year players to receive smaller awards or sometimes no athletic scholarship, but then after their freshman year, inclusive of moving from their sophomore and junior years, they can receive extra athletic awards. So they can receive an increase with each year. That's the purpose of the 1 year award, because each year you can then increase or make changes. So hopefully that clarifies and that helps within the understanding of how scholarships work.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Eligibility is a big piece of this puzzle during the recruiting process, certainly for the coaches, and this is something that you as a youth player must be very informed on. The NCAA oversee this. On this slide, there is a link that I put up there, and I'll just go ahead. Let's see if I can also share this. So this is directly off the NCAA website. So they have a lot of information. You can go to the link that was on the slide and you can find a lot of great information, particularly with how it relates to your eligibility. So you must know the high school process in order to be eligible. The worst thing that you would have happen to you is you find the best program for you, the coach wants you, it's a great environment, you love it, and yet you're not eligible to go there because you slipped up during your high school process. So there are a minimum number of course requirements. You can see here it states 16. What is also vital is that you complete 10 of those 16 core courses prior to your senior year. So this is something that you and your academic advisor in high school should be going through very early in the process. Your freshman and sophomore years in high school, you should already be familiar with what it takes to be a qualifier, is what the NCAA call you, in order to play at the Division I or Division II or Division III levels. So you can read through this. I'm not going to go through all the details. This is very easy to go through, but the test scores are a big piece of this, and it's worth highlighting this. We use at the Division I level a sliding scale on your strength of academics. So for example, we use your GPA and your SAT or ACT scores, and those will determine whether you are eligible. So the higher your GPA, the slightly lower the NCAA will grant your test score to be, and vice versa. If your GPA is low, then now you must have a much higher SAT or ACT score in order to become eligible. So here is the sliding scale that we use. You can see it there, and it's noticeable, or you guys need to be aware that we have a 2.3, I'm highlighting it right there, a 2.3 minimum cutoff. So if your GPA is below 2.3, and remember this GPA is based off your core courses only. They don't include other courses, elective courses. So for example, I'm sure many of you take sport, take soccer as a course. Your A in soccer will not count towards your core course GPA, unfortunately. So whatever your GPA is, if it is below a 2.3, you will not be eligible to compete at the Division I level. You have this box here, and it's classified as an academic red shirt. What that means is if your GPA falls below this, then you could still attend that school. You could still theoretically receive financial aid, although you can imagine a coach is not going to be very willing to give you athletic scholarship if you're not eligible to compete. But you will be allowed to attend and train with the team. However, you will not be allowed to compete or play in games. That's the definition of an academic redshirt. So you can look through this sliding scale, and let's say right now, you know, you have a GPA of approximately 2.75, then you know that right now I must get higher than 810 on my SAT score, or I must have a cumulative ACT score of higher than 59 if I want to be eligible. So realistically, whenever I talk with recruits, I always try and use as a barometer. I encourage them, you should have a GPA of a 3.0 or higher. You can see here the 3.0 standard now puts you in line. It is, I say a 3.0 and 1,000 SAT score should be the bare minimum you guys should target. And that easily puts you in range of being eligible. It's worth noting, and if I go back to our presentation screen, we can go back to some of these issues. It's worth noting that your eligibility to play at Division 1 does not necessarily mean that you'll be accepted to the university of your choice. These are the criteria laid out by the NCAA for you to be eligible. So as we see here, that's that minimum 2.3 GPA, the 16 core courses, and the 10-7 rule reflects how you must have 10 of those core courses completed before you enter your 7th semester, which is the beginning of your senior year. So you may have a situation where you're eligible, but the school that you're targeting to attend, they may have a higher admissions entry requirement. They may have a 3.5 GPA that they need for you to be admitted, and your 3.1, 3.2, yes, allows you to be eligible, but doesn't allow you to be accepted to your school of choice. So this is why, going back to the first screen, have a number of choices. Some academic schools, you may have high entry level requirements. Make sure you're also looking at and comparing and contrasting schools that you like that may have lower entry level requirements. This would be very helpful during your process. So as we mentioned, the junior college provides an entry into becoming eligible to play at the Division 1 or 2 level if you didn't meet the criteria of the 2.3, the 16 core courses. And I've come across many players that have had good GPAs, have good test scores, but unfortunately they just didn't complete the extra English course, the extra maths course. Maybe they were weak in maths and they failed that course. They didn't complete it before their senior year, and unfortunately that will render them ineligible. So in those cases, that's a good path for them now to enter junior college, and the associate's degree that is offered by a junior college now allows you to become eligible to compete at Division 1. Typically an associate's degree will take 2 years to complete. I have had students complete it within a year and a half, and that will allow them then to join UTRGV in their spring semester, so prior to the fall semester, which is helpful. So those are considerations to be aware of. The NCAA also monitors and determines who is eligible from an athletic standpoint, and this means the NCAA wants amateur athletes to compete at the college level. So again, if you play professionally, you will not be eligible to then come and play at a university in the NCAA. And to clarify some information on the amateur status, so that obviously means you cannot sign a professional contract, you cannot play for a professional team. However, it's important to note, for example, many youth players play on MLS academy teams. Well, an MLS team is a professional team, but you are playing for their youth team. So you are permitted to play with a professional organization, such as an MLS academy team, as long as you haven't signed a contract and you are not receiving any expenses above what are actually necessary for you to play. So for example, MLS academies offer scholarships that cover your training, they cover your transportation, and they cover meals sometimes when you're on the road. So those are obviously expenses that you need to participate. There's nothing in addition to those that you would then consider a salary or a benefit. So amateur status must be maintained. There is also a 1-year grace period after graduation that is important to be aware of. So for example, if you graduate from high school this coming year in 2020, you do not necessarily need to enroll at the university level immediately this upcoming fall. You are granted a 1-year grace period at which you could continue playing for your club team, for an academy team. you could play for another amateur team, and then that would not take away any eligibility for you to compete in the NCAA. After that 1 year grace period is up, if you now continue to play any organized competition, which would be a club team, it would even, it's very strict, it would even relate to a YMCA league or a church league, any organized game that you play in after that 1 year grace period, now that would take away a year of eligibility from you at the NCAA level. So very important to note there. It's now becoming very customary for youth players, because the U19 age restrictions that are available in the old academy league, but still in the youth leagues. If you're 19, after you graduate high school as a senior, you're still of age to play with your club team. You could still play with them for 1 year, but then after that year, you are not allowed to play for that club team unless you risk having a year taken away from your eligibility. And once you do enroll at the university level, you now have 4 years of eligibility, but you are given 5 years in which to complete those 4. So for example, you may have heard the term red shirt. So this may apply to somebody who has been injured and an injury prevented them from playing during that year. Well, the NCAA don't want an injury to take away a year of eligibility from you. So that would effectively then carry you into your 5th year, and you would still be able to play those 4 years. Equally, it is sometimes common if an incoming freshman isn't quite ready to play, then the coach may choose to not play in that year, and that would count as a redshirt year, and you would still have 4 years of eligibility at your university. So hopefully that makes sense. One thing to note is after you've done all your hard work at high school, you're now eligible to play, you've enrolled, you found your school, there are still NCAA criteria that you need to manage in order to maintain your eligibility. So for example, progress towards degree status is something that we monitor very closely with our student athletes. So you must maintain a minimum GPA in order to remain eligible while at college. You must also maintain a certain number of courses that you pass relating to your major in order to maintain your eligibility. So let's say you attend UTRGV and you want to be an engineer, or you want to be a doctor. Obviously, you have a major course of study and certain courses that you need to take. In that degree of study, you now need to take a certain minimum number and pass a minimum number of those courses in order to maintain your eligibility. So those are things that we monitor closely while you're at university as well. So again, just a brief little touch upon some of the eligibility factors that the NCAA oversee and do a very good job with. This is a very important piece because obviously many players, I'm sure, many who are tuning in and listening right now, many players who are currently playing for me right now have ambitions to play pro. We've been very fortunate. We have a very strong program here. In the last 2 years, we've had 3 players sign professional. 1 was drafted at the MLS this past year. 2 are currently playing in the USL, the top two tiers of the professional game here in the US. So it's important to have a lot of this information just so you make good decisions, while you're still in high school. So I put up some numbers there. These are directly from the NCAA, and also the MLS Super Draft numbers are taken into account. There is actually more detail on the NCAA website, but just briefly, there's just over 450,000 high school level players in the US. So players that are playing either at high school or club would be included, so high school players. Of that number, only 5.7% will play in the NCAA. So that includes Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. Of those 450,000, only 1.3% will play at Division 1. So you can see going from high school to college is a big challenge, and only a small fraction, only 1.3%, make it to the Division 1 level. So again, when you're considering, do I play at Division 1, Division 2, or Division 3, it's very important to consider the best fit for you within each of those programs. You can find a very strong program that fits your needs and will give you a fantastic experience. Now moving from the college level to the professional level, we currently have 26 MLS teams, 35 USL Pro teams, USL Championship teams. There is now a 5% probability, this is just purely based off college players who are drafted, of turning pro. So obviously there are existing pros and international professional players that get signed to those MLS teams, but the number of players who are drafted, collegiate players who are drafted each year, only 5% will make it from the Division 1 level. It is, of course, still possible. There have been cases, it is rare. The Division 1 level, the biggest distinction, probably from a coach's standpoint, to try and illustrate is, yes, the vast number of players in the Division 1 level are the players who are being evaluated and monitored by the professional teams, primarily because the highest level within Division 1, those top teams, they actively do have some of the strongest teams, strongest players in the country. By default, the Division 1 programs often have larger resources, larger budgets, and that allows them to offer sometimes, again, we're talking about the top programs within each division, so the top 25, the top 50 programs within Division 1 do have fantastic facilities, great resources, coaching staff budgets, and they do a good job in preparing student athletes for the professional game. So that's why the Division 1 arena is targeted by the pros more often than not. It doesn't mean that you cannot turn professional and be drafted if you play at Division 2. I said at the outset of the presentation, I coached at a Division 2 program, Coker College in South Carolina, and I had one of my players drafted in the MLS from the Division 2 level. So it can happen. It is more common for a Division 1 player to be drafted. So again, moving forward now, only 5% of those D1 players will then sign professional. So if you extrapolate that now, into the probability of those 450,000 youth players, then there is a 5% of 5.7% chance of all of those players becoming professional. And that relates to a 0.285% chance. And that includes all divisions. Obviously, if you're now targeting only Division 1 players, because these are just probability numbers, mathematical numbers, we know that the majority are signed from Division 1. So if you only use the Division 1 numbers, now that's 5% of 1.3% of that initial 450,000 figure. And that relates to a 0.065 chance of being drafted and playing professional. So it's not even a 1% chance. It's not even a 0.1% chance. It's less than 0.1% chance. So yes, we all know it's very competitive. Those numbers hopefully help us see a good picture, and particularly with parents, as you go through the recruiting process here in high school. Hopefully it will help you focus on things that are important to you in your future career, based off the fact that only a 0.065 chance of making a professional career. Now, of course, we all want our players, every player who comes to me has ambition. Certainly we try and prepare our players as best as possible. There's nothing that would make me happier than to see every one of my players playing in the MLS. I could watch them on TV. You know, we will work very hard to try and achieve that, but the odds of doing that are obviously very low. Here's a slide that I think is very helpful. When we mentioned at the beginning that often it is very heavily one-sided from the coach. I watch you play, I call you, I tell you details about our program, I invite you to visit and spend time with our players. It's very helpful to try and understand the timelines that are taking place. And if you're actively involved in this process, which is what I'm strongly encouraging, if you're now reaching out to coaches, if you're now actively researching your schools and visiting, then you're going to be aware of this timeline and it will help you through the process. So I can share with you the majority of coaches, you know, certainly we spend a large portion of our time on the road. You know, you guys travel all over the country playing games, therefore we travel all over the country watching you play games. So we spend a lot of time identifying players, evaluating you during games, and obviously contacting you to establish a conversation and get to know. So we typically work, and then I'm speaking for myself, but also typically at the Division I level, most coaches will operate at least a year in advance. So right now, if there are any seniors out there that are or started their process in their senior year, you are already behind the ball. Okay, so to give you an example, it is my goal each year before we start. So take this year, for example, before we even start the 2020 season in September or in August with our preseason date, before we even start, it is my goal to have already completed my 2021 recruiting class. Okay, so to help you understand how that works, so this spring, for example, it's been curtailed, and you know, with the coronavirus situation impacting travel and impacting games, this may disrupt this timeline for a lot of individuals, for a lot of universities moving into the 2021 recruiting cycle. However, this spring is where I would target juniors. So at the end of the fall, we're obviously busy during the fall season. That's our time of competition. We travel and compete every weekend. So it's very difficult, other than local games, it's difficult for us to travel and watch a lot of games during the fall. So the minute the fall is over, so in that November and December timeframe, that is when I typically will target our juniors. So the class of 2021 will have already been evaluated in November and December, moving into January and February and March, early spring. So I hope to have already identified and then contacted and initiated conversations, got to know youth players during that early spring time frame. As I travel, as I reach late spring, I will now, you know, go through that list of players that I've identified and I've established relationships with, and based on the relationships now have a stronger opinion on who's a better fit for my program. In that late spring, I will start to target and make decisions on who my #1 recruits are. And I may feel comfortable at that point in making verbal offers, in discussing scholarship awards. The summer is a very important time frame for me as a college coach, because it actually allows those targeted players who I think are my #1 recruits. Obviously, at different positions, I may have defenders, midfielders, forwards, goalkeepers in that group. I now have an opportunity to invite them to come and attend my ID camp, where I get to work with them at a much closer level. So now they can see me as a coach, they can see how I coach my team, I can see how they adapt to certain changes in tactical things on the field. And the summer, so late spring to summer and sometimes into early fall, that will be the time frame that I wish to make financial offers and hopefully solidify my incoming class for that following year. So if I have verbal commitments in that summertime period, when it comes to November, the second Wednesday in November is the first opportunity to send out an NLI. And hopefully you guys remember an NLI is a national letter of intent, and that's when you can sign that scholarship award. So that gives you an idea on the timeline. So now how does that relate to you as a recruit? Well, that should mean this. You should, by the beginning of your junior year in high school, so ideally during the summer before your junior year, this would be the latest that I would recommend you to have already identified a large number of schools that you feel, and I recommend 6 to 10, identify 6 to 10 universities and soccer programs that you feel are a good fit for you. They're in the location that you ideally would like. They have the right campus environment that you would like. They offer your academic major. They're financially within range. You have an idea of the team and the coach, and that fits with what you want as a soccer player. You don't have to have final answers on all of those, but they should be somewhere close. And then you will now spend your fall semester and into your spring semester of your junior year now communicating with those coaches, hopefully visiting the campuses of all those universities. Those would be your unofficial visits. And you will now start to identify which of these 6 to 10 colleges would I hopefully have as a top 3. You certainly need to have in those 6 to 10 some schools that have criteria. If you're looking at level of play, maybe it's Division 1 school, maybe it's a Division 2 school or a Division 3 school, maybe cost, maybe one might be very expensive. So you also have a mid-range, you also have a more affordable cost, and so on. You know, have a good range. If you're only targeting schools in the top 50 of Division 1, and then it comes out that you're not eligible for Division 1, then you've wasted a lot of that time. So be smart with the number of colleges that you identify. Now, once you get into the summer after your junior year, so this is the summer before your senior year, remember, this is where coaches are hopefully making financial offers. So you need to be in a position in the summer prior to your senior year to hopefully accept one of those offers. And if you want to accept, then you need to have visited that campus. You need to have a good understanding and relationship with the coach and know what he is asking of his players, knowing what kind of tactical, environment he has. And hopefully you'd have even spoken with some of the players and have a good feel for what it would be like to actually go to that university. So when official visits are very important there, ID camps are very important. I use, this is something that I know many parents will probably be considering. There's a lot of summer camps out there to attend, and yes, there's an expense involved in traveling and participating in those. So you have to find the right balance. Obviously, it's very difficult to go to 10 of them. The cost is very high. That will keep you not only busy, but almost exhausted during the course of the summer. So can you target maybe 2 or 3 camps that fall into those 6 to 10 schools that you've already identified as being good fits? Try and find a number that you can attend that will give you hopefully some good answers to those questions off that first line. So during that summer and now early fall of your senior year, you are now allowed to take an official visit, and hopefully it's at this time frame, like we said, summer to now early fall, official visits, verbal commitments, and signing of NLIs take place. So very important that you understand those timelines, and hopefully that will help make the process particularly smooth. This is also a big piece that this is very helpful for me. Again, I certainly want to thank Gareth in giving me this opportunity to communicate and reach out to all the youth players and the parents here in Texas, and even outside, since this is an opportunity for me to now interact with you guys and hopefully build a two-way, communication. So what is it that a coach, is looking for? You guys need to understand this. This is a conversation that hopefully you will have, with a coach during this recruiting process. So I can, again, only speak for me, that the beauty of our sport is that there are many different, coaches who think differently about the way the game should be played. They choose to play in different styles with different formations. And not only does that make it a wonderful sport to play, but it also makes it great for you as an individual, because yes, you can find a program, a university that does fit your needs as a player. So speaking for myself, this is what I typically focus on when I try and go through the recruiting process. Of course, I'm looking for soccer talent. I want to build the strongest soccer team I can. It is my goal to win a national championship. I want to be very successful here with the program at UTRGV. I want to build a lot of pride into our university and into our program. And I want to develop high-level players who can enjoy being successful in their college career. So, of course, soccer talent is important. And that is broken down into 4 areas. Hopefully you guys are very aware. You have technical ability. You must have good technique, your passing, your shooting, your control. That also applies to tactical ability. I'm looking at decisions that are being made by players during games. Do you understand your role as an individual, as a defender, as a midfielder, as a forward? Are you able to carry out that role tactically during the game? There's a tactical component. There's a physical component. Certainly it's the speed of play that I typically apply the physical component to more than just a strength factor. But yes, you need to be quick enough to play within the team dynamic. You must be fit enough to play within that team dynamic. And there are certain positions, you can imagine a defender's role. It would not be great to have, a defender who was under 5'5" if you expect a defender to have to deal with crosses and corners and free kicks. So there are physical attributes that I look for within that talent area for recruits. And finally, there are psychological components to what I look for in talent. When I go out and watch games, I try and get there early. So I'm watching during the warm-up. What I'm looking for now are signs of character within players. I'll try and see if someone is preparing themselves for the game well. Are they just going through the motions in the war? Do they think it's going to be easy? Are they actively engaged with the coach, with their teammates? Do I see leadership attributes coming out during the warm-up? Certainly psychological attributes are evident and on display during a game. Here's a little secret that many of your high school and club coaches probably won't like hearing me say, but I'm sure they'll understand it. This is interesting. When I come and watch you play, I prefer you to be losing because it reveals so much more about you as a player, particularly on the psychological side. So if I come and watch you play a game and you're winning comfortably 2-0, 3-0, then you're going to look good. You're not going to be challenged. When things go well, everyone looks good. If I find you in a game that's a very challenging game, ideally, for me, like I said, I love to see you down a goal. I love to see you losing, because now that will reveal to me your character. What do you do in that position? If I'm looking to build a program that wins national championships, I expect to be in very difficult games. If we're hoping to play in the national championship game, it's very likely that we could be playing a very strong team and we could be down 1-0 at halftime. So I need to know how my players will respond. So if you're losing in a game, I'll watch to see whether you start to shrink and now you don't have the confidence to play your best. Do you blame or now argue with the referee over decisions? You're getting distracted. Do you blame and shout and complain at your teammates? These are all psychological attributes that I try and focus on as well. So that factors into the talent that I'm looking for. There is an academic component, obviously, to that. If I'm looking to sign and have you enroll at UTRGV, you must be able to be accepted. You must be eligible to play at Division 1 level, and we mentioned those criteria earlier. I'm also looking beyond just being eligible. I'm looking for you to have the experience of showing that you can succeed in a highly disciplined environment, a very challenging environment. If you're training every day and going to class every day and then traveling to play games on the weekend, you do not have a lot of free time. So I'm looking for disciplined players, committed players who have already demonstrated. If you have predominantly A's and B's, you're demonstrating that you can handle playing soccer and succeeding in high school. So again, academic ability is very important to me. The last thing I want to do is recruit a player who is a fantastic soccer player, but isn't able to manage an academic workload at the university level. And now, as we mentioned earlier, there are ongoing NCAA criteria to maintain eligibility. And now, once he's signed for me and I've awarded him scholarship, if he's a good player, he's now ineligible to play because he failed classes. That's not something I want. And obviously, I therefore look at academic ability very intensely during the recruiting phase. So yes, your grades, your test scores, but also the comments from your coaches and your high school counselors on how you perform in the classroom. Here is probably the biggest factor that I think, or the best illustration of where you should play. Experienced players obviously bring a greater sense of security to an unknown element of the college game. I'm trying to predict how you're going to play at the Division 1 level here in college soccer. So if you've only ever competed in a YMCA league, you may not have been prepared to play against high-level collegiate soccer players. So this is the benefit of playing on a club team that plays at a high level. The Development Academy League was obviously a good indicator of this, but there are many ECNL teams and club teams that have high-level games week in, week out. They play and train in an intense environment. They compete against high-level teams. The higher that level, the greater experience you have, the better the transition. Nothing's ever a guarantee, but the better the transition into the collegiate game. So experience plays a factor. Discipline kind of carries into, I always mention discipline and character. This carries into the psychological aspects. I want to see players who can understand what their objectives are. They know their roles, and that role pertains to on the field and in the classroom. It pertains to during the warm-up. It pertains to how you travel. Are you a good role model? Are you a team player? Do you support your teammates? Are you positive? And are you a good leader? So discipline and character are two elements that I like to really highlight whenever I talk to my recruits and try to explain to them what it will be like to come and play for me. So those are some of the areas that I like to focus on. Hopefully that gives you an insight into a college coach's process as well. So now you'll focus on yourself. What can you do? You've now hopefully got a little bit of information from this presentation. What can you do to help yourself, to recruit yourself? I can share with you a very nice story. I'm from England originally, and I came over to US and I played here at the college level. Fantastic experience. But the story in how I got recruited is quite amusing. I was playing for a club team in the UK, and I had a player on my team who was a former youth player at Leeds United. So there's a nod to Gareth. I think he has an affinity for Leeds there. But one of the players on my team was formerly a youth player, an academy player with Leeds. He got released. He didn't make it at Leeds. But he was now being recruited by an English coach who was coaching here in the US. And we were traveling on the bus to an away game, and we're just casually chatting, and the conversation, the topic of America comes up, and he says, yes, there's a coach who's recruiting me, but he didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave the UK. He already had a university place in the UK. And I just said to him there and then, I said, give me his number, I'll go. And I actively contacted the coach. He did not know who I was, but I reached out to him, I called him, and I initiated that conversation. I presented him with some information. And fortunately, because he knew the level I was playing at, the environment I was in, we were able to establish a relationship that led to me sending out video. And effectively, that's how I got recruited. So I initiated everything. So certainly I'm encouraging you to be very proactive. You have recruiting aids. You know, your high school coaches, your club coaches are a massive resource. Yes, please encourage them to help you. They can speak with college coaches. Hopefully some of them played college themselves, have existing relationships, and they know that process, and they can give you some very good guidance. So use them as a recruiting aid. The tournaments that you attend and showcases are incredibly valuable in showcasing your ability. So yes, those are good. Highlight videos that you're able to put together and obviously pass on to coaches. All of those are valuable recruiting aids. We also need to mention the academic counselors who need to help you in managing your eligibility piece and making sure that you get those GPAs and test scores that fit the sliding scale, that you complete all of your core courses in the appropriate time frame. So those are recruiting aids, but you are the primary factor here. And I include your parents in that. Don't rely on your parents. They can be an aid, but don't rely on your parents to call on your behalf or to write emails on your behalf. Think about this perspective from a college coach. Who am I recruiting? Who's going to play on my team? Is it you or is it your mother or father? Therefore, I would prefer to get a good understanding and build a relationship and hear from you on the phone and receive an email that you have written so that I know and I have a better understanding of who you are as a person. So use your parents as good aids, but be proactive. So contact coaches directly, just as I did. How can you do that? Well, there are a number of ways. You can do what I did and call them directly on the phone. Remember, if you're a sophomore, they won't be able to call you back. So you can call them on the phone. College coaches are notoriously busy. I said we spend a lot of our time on the road. You can imagine we're going to be out on the soccer field a lot coaching our own teams. So if you call, you may not always get us. You may not always be able to speak to us. Can you text? You can if you have the coach's cell phone number. Can you email? Okay, so those are all different ways. I would encourage an email first, since you can provide a good amount of information, and you know, hopefully a good college coach, if he's actively reading his emails, can see that quickly and he can return and now establish that form of communication. Make sure you provide, this is important, make sure you provide relevant information. Like we just said, and I can share with you, I receive, I want to say, when I get into the office every morning, when I open my email, I will see invariably between probably 15 to 20, and if you include my my assistant coach in that, we're probably looking at 20 to 30 emails a day that we receive from recruits. So it can take a long time to go through those. If I see a big long email, it's not going to be received with the best of intentions. So I don't need to hear about, you know, all your desires and wishes and what you did when you were 10 years of age. Really, a coach needs to receive pertinent information in a very concise way. So information, and you'll be surprised how many emails I have received where I don't even have a name. People will write and say things like, hey coach, I really want to play for you. You know, I hope you can come and watch me play. You know, I want to be a vaquero. I want to play for UTRGV. You know, how can I do this? Well, you know, who are you? What's your name? You know, where are you? So provide your name, provide your position, because I may be recruiting different positions each year. It'll be very helpful for me to know when you graduate, so I know what recruiting class to include you in. And then things like the name of your team, the jersey number that you wear, so that if I do watch you play, I can identify you easily. The name of your high school, your GPA, your test scores if you've already took them, and any game schedules that you have already, you can provide links to. So these are very short, concise, and easy things to include in an email. I encourage you to do that. If you have links to YouTube videos, that's fantastic. Highlight videos are great. it would be much more valuable to send, you know, a lot of parents may ask, do I send a highlight video? Do I send a full game video? Well, again, if I get 20 to 30 emails a day, I can't watch 20 to 30 games a day. So highlight videos are very valuable in helping you to pique my interest. You need to show me something that I will be interested in, and then you'll encourage me to reply to you and say, can you please send me a full game video? So those are all very good things to try and include, and an email is a great way to do that. And then you can follow up with a phone call after that. So what else can you do besides making that initial contact? Well, you can go and visit the college. Okay, you can actually watch the team play. These are probably two of the best things you can do that will help you determine and break down that list of 6 to 10 schools that you've probably identified, and now you can put them in a top 3 potentially, because you've seen and visited and been on campus with your own eyes, and you've also watched the team play. You now have a better appreciation of how they play, the style, and how you might fit in with them. So very important. I've had so many players that if I'll go and watch play, or a coach has asked me to speak to his team, and I'll typically ask, who has been to UTRGV? And very few hands go up. Who has watched my team play? And very few hands go up. So how can you say with certainty that you want to come and play for my team if you've never been on my campus and you've never seen my team play? So very important. This will help you in the process. And then the last thing that I will definitely say, because you may not think it's always a factor, but show interest. You know, certainly do your research, go online. You can visit the web pages, you can look at rosters. Many universities, we do this, we host all of our games online, so you can watch our games, and now you have a very good point of reference when you're emailing or calling the head coach. Okay, if you do your research and you show interest, you're going to make me think now, wow, I have a player here who knows the name of my team. He's referenced maybe a game that he's watched. He knows our mascot name, and he's obviously shown he's done his research. I'm much more likely to think that that player is invested in my program. That player wants to be in my program. And if he has that high level of commitment, he's more likely to work hard and be successful. So do show interest and do your research. Very vital. Tying into what can you do? Here is a list of questions that I think could be valuable from your perspective. Again, it is often a one-way street with sometimes the communication that is made. The coach watches you play, the coach will call you, the coach will speak to you about his program. So you will be receiving a lot of information from us, but you need to provide us with information to remember. It must be a two-way street. It must be a good fit. The last thing I want is to watch you play, identify you as a great player, call you and explain everything we do and tell you all the details about our program, and then have you commit and come and play for us, but I didn't get to learn enough about you as a person. And then when you get here, you don't really enjoy the environment, you don't fit in well with my style of play, and so on. So very important that you provide information to the coach. So a couple of questions, and you can make a note of these and how they may relate to your interests. But the first thing that you should always consider is, do you offer the major that I want to study? You may have a great school, a great program, a great team, but like we said at the beginning, try and imagine, ask yourself the question, if soccer was somehow removed by some unfortunate circumstances, would I still wish to go to that university? Do they have the major that I want to graduate with, my degree? Because again, if I remember, I have a 0.0685 chance of becoming a pro. So I want to make sure that whatever I study will help me find my way into a career that I want to be. So does it offer that major? What are the academic requirements? Can you get accepted? Do you If you have a 3.0 and the university has an acceptance GPA of 3.5, you need to know that. Now that might not be a school you can attend. So find out the academic requirements, equally find out the level of play of the team. Obviously it's important to look at the rankings. That will give you an indicator. It's not always accurate. You know, the rankings are a good indicator of success, but like we mentioned, you should be also focused on what style of play. Does the coach value me and my strengths as a player? But try and get a good indication of the level of the team. Good questions to ask are the conferences that you play in. You know, this is all part of the experience. I think we're very fortunate at UTRGV. One of the attractions for me coaching here is that our conference is one of the strongest geographically in the country. We travel very far to some, you know, very attractive locations, and that's a great experience for our players. They don't just play here in the state of Texas. They don't just play here in the region. They get to play against very different styles of play from teams that are in the Northeast and the Southwest. Our conference opponents, we travel and play Seattle University, all the way up in the Northwest. We travel to play teams in California. We travel and play in Utah, in Arizona, in Colorado, in Kansas, here in the state of Texas. So we have, and we also choose to play teams in other parts of the country. We traveled to Florida last year. We're traveling to South Carolina this year, the Southeast. So that's a very good aspect of your experience. You know, do you get to travel and play in unique places? Okay. How it relates to you as an individual is very important. Are you speaking to a coach? If you're a midfielder, are you speaking to a coach and he has 3 returning midfielders coming back onto his team that year? It's important for you to ask how many players in your position does he need for your recruiting class? And how many does he already have graduating from that position? Ask him how many starters are graduating from the midfield or the forward line or goalkeeper or whatever. I always encourage recruits to be direct. Certainly you can understand, this is something very good for players and parents to understand. You know, we're all trying to find the best fit. You know, we're talking to a number of recruits. I'll have a list of 50 recruits early on. That list will gradually start to whittle down. I may be looking at 2 or 3 players in each position for each roster spot that I have. So yes, we will be trying to figure out during our process. I'm learning more about you as I talk to you. I'm learning more about you if I talk to your parents. I'm learning more about you each time I speak to your coach. So I'm trying to find out who is the strongest player, the strongest recruit, and you guys are trying to find out which is the strongest team. Don't be afraid to be direct. Ask the coach, have you seen me play? Ask the coach where he sees you fitting into his team. Ask him directly, does he think you can play on his team? Ask him how he thinks you need to improve in order to play on his team. Ask him if he is recruiting you. Don't leave things so open that you allow a coach to still keep you at the bottom of his list, but you're not understanding the true value of where you stand in his recruiting process. Don't be afraid to ask him as well, are you able to offer me scholarship? Do you have scholarship available for an incoming player in my position? Okay, and then hopefully, you know, for me personally, I like to be as transparent as possible. I will say, this is the positions we need. This is the player that I want. You have these attributes. I would like to see improvements in these areas for you to really be successful here. I think it's very important, and I say this to every recruit. I want to win. I mentioned earlier, I'm very focused on building a strong program that we can be proud of here, that win championships. So the way I operate my team is the best 11 players will start every game. In order for us to win that game, the best players will start. Doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a senior. If you're playing and training and you show yourself to be the best to be in that best 11, you will play. Now, I'll also be, equally transparent and say, as a freshman, you still have to learn our style of play. You still have to learn the way we tactically approach the game. You still have to develop relationships with me as a coach and understand what I demand of you. You have to develop relationships with the players and your teammates on the field. So it's certainly a difficult transition for an incoming freshman to be at the same level of a junior or a senior who's returning to the team. So realistic expectations, I think, are very important in these discussions in the recruiting process. So here are a few questions that I feel can help you in furthering that conversation. So hopefully that was a good amount of information. It feels like obviously I'm talking and talking and talking, and there is so much information as it relates to the NCAA and aspects of your college choice, your college participation, the Division I collegiate soccer model, that we could speak for days and days. I'm sure Gareth knows, but I hope that was beneficial. And I do believe that Gareth may have some additional input here and possible questions that you guys have asked of him.
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much. That was awesome, great information, and really helps guide players and what the process looks like and things they should be doing to help in that process. And thank you for taking the time. We do have a few questions that we kind of collected from different players around the state. And if you have a few minutes, just like to answer some of those questions. You answered quite a lot of them in your presentation. So I'm going to kind of combine a few of them, I think, in some different questions, but just so we can kind of clarify all of these.
Sounds great. Go ahead.
The first one was, and you talked about emailing coaches and reaching out to them. How often do you think players should email coaches, and is there a specific time of the year where it's good to contact coaches when you're not in season, not busy, those type of things? And then kind of piggybacking on that, what do you do if a player sends multiple emails to a coach and they don't respond back? How should a player take that approach?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's going to vary. This is where you have to be intuitive. It helps to have some information, like we mentioned. If you're emailing, a coach during the fall season, obviously he's going to be incredibly busy. His priority is going to be his team. We're, training our team. We're organizing our travel. We're playing in games. We're trying to scout opponents, develop, scouting presentation. So we are very busy. You may not see a quick response time during the fall. The spring, if you remember the timeline, right after the fall is complete. So in that November to December timeframe, and particularly in the January and February months, that is where the students are on holiday. The fall semester is finished, particularly in that holiday period, and a college coach should have time to focus on the recruiting aspect. So be aware if you don't receive. I always think email is the best because you're guaranteed to connect with them, whereas a phone call, you could be playing phone tag and missing. So if you don't receive an email back, I'd say during the fall, if you don't receive an email back within a week, then one of two things are happening. Yes, he's very busy. So follow up, email again. Do not be afraid to email again. However, if you're not receiving an email response during that December, January, February timeframe within a week, then it may be, and I can say this has happened to me as well. There are recruits that, like I said, out of 20 and 30 emails a day, I don't always get to respond to each one. So I will look at the email, I will have read it, and if there's criteria in that email that helps me get a good idea of the level of player, I will respond. If not, I'll be very honest. If I get an email that doesn't have a name on it, it doesn't give me enough information, then it typically does not get a response. So don't be afraid if you don't get a response back, but certainly after three or four emails on your part, particularly during that spring timeframe prior to your senior year, be intuitive, and you may need to start removing or at least dropping that program to the bottom of your list.
That's awesome. Next one, DA programs, Development Academy programs, or whatever those are going to be called now as we move forward in the future, are not close to me, and they're not something perhaps maybe that my parents can make happen because of financial or travel requirements or their work schedules. What is your recommendation for getting noticed if you're not part of these clubs and you're not able to go to large showcase environments? So if you're in a small town or a small club or something like that, is there any advice you have for those players?
Yeah, and that's a frequent question. Different coaches, will certainly have different recruiting philosophies. And, I know for me personally, you can look at our roster. I have players here in the state of Texas that weren't on an academy team. They're on a club team. It's going to vary. If you have a club team with a coach who provides a very challenging environment, a coach that has you guys, or a league that competes at a high level, it doesn't need to be academy status or ECNL. You will still be gaining good experience and developing as a player. The most crucial thing, if you are not on a team that has the name status or the name recognition, is that you are able to compete in events where you get to put yourself in front of college coaches. And that's usually the criteria that the academy teams or the MLS academies now, however they end up positioning themselves, and some of the stronger club programs, by default, those stronger club programs will participate in some of the higher end showcase events and tournaments. The higher end tournaments are literally just tournaments where they have more college coaches attending. So if you're playing in a tournament where there are 300 college coaches, that's very good for you. If you're playing in a tournament where there's only 3 college coaches, that's not so great for you. So yes, try to be in a program that has a high level environment. Try to be with a program that participates and takes part in signs up for these tournaments where many coaches attend. If you're unfortunate that you don't have access to a team close enough, or you just haven't been able to be selected onto one of those teams, now there's more. Basically, the impetus falls on you to put yourself in front of the coach. So this is now where you'll rely on your local coaches who can probably come and watch you play in high school or in a local game, and equally the onus now on attending college ID camps probably becomes more important. So it is a balance. Some coaches, I certainly don't, refer any difference to what team you're on. I will look at the level of your team and the level of you as a player. We've had players that have come and attended our ID camp that I have not seen play with their club team because they haven't competed in many major tournaments. And we have a player that we actually signed this spring. He attended, he was a high school graduate last year, and he joined UTRGV this spring, and he did not play on an elite program, if you want to call it that.
It's awesome. Great. And to kind of piggyback on that, and you talked about ID camps and you just touched on it again there. Going to ID camps specifically at a school versus going to ID camps where it's not on a college campus, but there's maybe lots of coaches that are showing up to those ID events. Does one give you more of a chance than another, or does it set you up better to go to that particular school? I think a lot of times players get those two things and they're not sure what the difference is between those ID camps.
I think they're both valuable because ultimately what you want is to put yourself in front of the coach. So what you need to do is find out specifically, ask the director of the camp questions such as, are coaches just watching games and evaluating players, or are they physically coaching sessions during the camp? Because sometimes if they're only going to get to see you play in a game, yes, that's good. But if there's 100 or 300 players at the camp, that can be difficult. I certainly value, at our camp, I will coach. So I will physically take a team and I will coach them in sessions because I value the ability now to go ahead and manipulate the training session to reflect what I want from you as a player. If I'm watching you in a game and, let's say, for example, you're a midfielder and I want my midfielders to come deep and pick up the ball because we possess well with our back four, and your team doesn't do that, I have the ability at my ID camp, because I'm coaching you, to set that up and see how you do. So I value that aspect. If I do a non-college ID camp, which I have done, I typically choose only the college ID camps where they allow me to coach as well. Again, I want to have that interaction with the player. So ask questions like that. They are both valuable because ultimately you're putting yourself in front of the college coaches and their eyes. For me personally, I like the ability to work with you, because I think it just gives me a better evaluation of who you are as a player and what you can do for me as a team should I choose to sign.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think also players can obviously reach out to coaches at their respective schools and say what ID camps would you might be at, and maybe from a geographical perspective that might help them with travel as well as an option. So that's awesome. Last question for you. What catches your attention when you're looking at highlight videos? I'm sure you get flooded with these highlight videos, and players often say, what do I put on them? You know, how long should they be? What do I put at the beginning? What do I put at the end? That kind of stuff. You know, what catches your attention on a highlight video that then makes you maybe want to reach out to that player or go watch them play in person?
Yeah, great question. And this is sometimes the difficulty in what you have access to as a youth player. So I'll answer it in two ways. The first way, I'll answer it from your perspective. You've got to market yourself. So one, can you have access to video that is high quality? It's not shaky on a bleacher where everyone's jumping up and down and parents are screaming and shouting, and it's far away, so I can't even really see what's going on. That's going to impact you. So can you either invest in a friend that you know, or I know some people obviously use services where they video games and they'll just follow the individual. So certainly market yourself, have a good product so it's watchable and you can actually see what is going on, to the point where I know who you are in that video. There are some services that provide little rings or little highlights so I know who the player is. Market yourself and put the best highlights you have available immediately at the beginning of that video. If you've scored a goal, put a goal in there. Put the best moments that you want to pique the interest of a coach. So that's from your marketing standpoint. Yes, that is important. From a coach's perspective now, this is what I need you to do. If you're a forward, if you're a midfielder, if you're a defender, what is your role? If you're a forward, your role is to score goals. Your role is to attack. If you're a defender, your role is to stop the other team from scoring goals, stop the other team from attacking. So you need to put highlight clips of you doing your job. Now, there are usually two sides to your job. So again, try to balance what you put on that video. So a forward, yes, you need to score goals, but a forward also needs to provide link-up play. So how do you combine with your other forwards? Put some content of that. A forward needs to defend. A forward needs to shape the opposition back four. So try and be, fairly all-encompassing with the content that you put on from the same attribute, but in the same respect. A defender, I've seen so many highlight videos from defenders, and of course we're all, it's very popular to possess out of the back, build out of the back, have defenders who are comfortable in possession. And I'll watch a highlight video and there'll be 80-90% of it will just be a defender passing. Now that's great. I do want to see how comfortable you are on the ball and whether you can pass and play, but ultimately I need to know that you can defend a high level forward. I need to see you shut down 1v1 situations. I need to see you win crosses, because as a defender you're gonna be dealing with those a lot. So try and make sure you include all aspects of your game. So market it well, make it watchable, make sure you're easily identifiable and it's good quality, and then show a good content. Realistically, 3 to 5 minutes should be sufficient.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think also important, like you said, too, to do your research on the program and the type of players that they're looking for and the positions that they're looking for to be able to showcase in your highlight videos. These are where I fit maybe within that program, and that comes into that. If you're a 5'5" striker playing as a 9 that runs in behind, but that coach likes to have a big target man and hold things up, then maybe that's not the college to be sending your highlight videos to, and to consider that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's great advice. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. It was awesome. We appreciate it, and look forward to South Texas being able to see you guys be successful at UTRGV. I know you had a last slide on your presentation. If you want to flick over to that one so that we can show the just one second, your contact information as well. So you're able to do that. But thank you very much, and anything that you have to say to end the presentation.
Yeah. No, you're more than welcome. Again, Gareth, I certainly am appreciative of this opportunity, particularly under these circumstances. I've not been able to travel. You guys aren't able to play games, so I haven't been able to recruit very well this spring. So the opportunity to interact with our youth players here in Texas is incredibly important. The job you guys do, in STISO and the organization is incredibly valuable. So again, thank you very much. And all I'll end with is, hopefully a message for everyone to, one, try and stay as positive as you can. It's sometimes difficult to be, removed from doing things that you love, and obviously being restricted in your movement. Guys who are not able to train with their teammates to go out and play at a park. But try and do everything you can during this time frame to become more aware of the process, to improve yourself as a player. Hopefully this has been valuable today in providing more information. Go out and do more research on the NCAA website, on the websites of all the universities, and also take time to invest in yourself. Go ahead and watch more games, watch them from a tactical perspective, maybe read some books, and hopefully it won't be too long. We'll be back out on the soccer field doing what we love, and hopefully I'll be watching you guys play. And with a bit of luck, maybe some of you guys out there will end up down here playing at UTRGV and winning championships. So thank you everyone for participating. Again, Gareth, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.